Welcome back to another video. Today we have an iPhone 14 Plus that came in for pretty much no Wi-Fi and boot looping. We're gonna go ahead and connect it to the PC and let's try to see if we can generate some kind of panic code, and then we'll just take it from there. So a few things I like to check. I want to make sure that the camera's working, front camera's working, but when we toggle over towards the back camera, it's completely black. If we go to verification report on 3U tools, we can see that the back camera comes up as NA. So definitely an issue with the back camera, a possibility. Maybe the customer installed a new back camera and didn't flash the phone. But we could go also and check the panic log. So let me go ahead and launch the panic log. We gotta catch this before it reboots again. But if I go over here, let's wait for this to generate. We should have a ton of panic logs. Click the first one at the top, and then right here, sensor array 0x4. 00000. That's typically points towards the wireless charging pad. Could be a possibility. Let's go to the overhead camera and then I'll kind of show you what's going on with Wi-Fi, but it seems like there's a lot of issues going on with this unit. So as far as the Wi-Fi, anytime we try to go and enable Wi-Fi, it's completely grayed out. So in theory, we should have a line across the Wi-Fi icon. Also, if we go to General and About, then we should have NA under Wi-Fi address, and we do. This confirms that it's actually a board issue. So we actually have to split this and try to figure out why Wi-Fi isn't working, and then we'll kind of just do a visual inspection when we split the board. So we'll take these little gummy pads off. If you don't take them off, they'll just cause a whole bunch of issues. What I essentially like to do is just remove the gummy pads and then also come in between the interposer, or on top of it, get in the middle of the interposer with a number 11 blade. That lets me know that I can get in early. So just a few more gummy pads, not too many more. Just get some flux all around the perimeter. Let's go up on temp. On this WL, I kind of start off at 190 because it's not really calibrated. And we just gotta give it time to heat up. Typically on 14s and 14 pluses, on top of the interposer or top board bottom side, I usually see a lot of broken pads around this area. This kind of seems like it's like a weak point. Plus the top board, or I guess this is the RF board. The RF board is way thinner than previous series. You'll see how it's just like really thin as soon as I split it. So I'll keep adding flux from time to time to make sure we don't deal with high level oxidation, because we are using higher than normal temperature compared to the previous series. So this is definitely going to take a little bit more heat compared to like splitting an X. So not ready yet. Forgot to take that little sticker off. And is there one on the other side? Nope. Let's go ahead and add some flux around that area. Every once in a while, see if I can get in with a number 11 blade. Not quite yet. You just have to wait for the right time and the right moment. Go up on temperature just a little bit and kind of see where the board is bent a little bit. This side goes down and this side stays up a little bit. So we need the back side to come up. Voila. Come into the ring, lift straight up, turn our unit off, turn on the fan. Yep, in exactly the same area I was guessing. So we'll get this under the microscope so we can get a full visual inspection. But we got a bunch of broken pads over there in that corner. Oof. So it's the same corner. It's a bit of a catastrophe. But here on the RF board, if we zoom in, you can clearly see we got a bunch of broken pads. So I'm not so worried about this board because I can just, I can just swap it, do a RF swap, and solve any kind of broken connections on this board, as long as the Wi-Fi IC and the baseband CPU and the baseband EEPROM is fine. So this side of the board is the CPU side. I'm gonna go ahead and switch it to the microscope view so you guys can see what I'm seeing. If we take a look at some of the surrounding broken pads, they're actually the broken pads left over from the other side of the board. However, these two pads kind of caught my attention because they're not like the pads that you see on the surrounding area. They're like broken pads on the physical interposer itself. So if you were paying attention earlier in the video, I did mention that the back camera was not working, and let me show you why. If you take a look at pad 549 and 586, they're all camera related. Now, I'm trying to see if this is even worth fixing because I want to first see if I have a dial mode reading on the little bit of the pad that's left, because from 586, I would have to run a jumper from 586 to J8 on under this chip, which is doable. But if we go to 549, then I would have to take the shield off on this side of the board and then run a jumper from one of the positive sides of the caps or under an IC, pretty much the easiest spot, and then reconnect it over here on pad 549. So we just have to figure out, is this too much work, right? To be able to jump, 549, 586, and we haven't even crossed the bridge of trying to figure out what's going on with the RF board. For now, by memory, I just think we got like at least 70% of these pads gone. And I don't think it's time efficient to rebuild each and every one of these pads. Also in the past, every time I've had a 14 or 14 plus with this many broken pads, I've also had broken pads under the Wi-Fi IC where I had to rebuild. Luckily, in previous cases, the Wi-Fi IC wasn't damaged, but however, I had to like rebuild some pads over here on a previous repair, a couple previous repairs. So I don't know if it's because this board is just so thin that when the customer experienced like a heavy drop or the screen breaks or whatever the case may be, but I commonly find that just there's a bunch of broken pads under the Wi-Fi IC. So for this, I'm gonna do a RF swap. I don't see myself wanting to sit here and rebuild 30, 40 pads or 20, whatever is left over, and then having to also figure out how I'm going to reconnect these two signal paths for 549 and 586. All right, so the verdict is if I have a signal here, good. Let me go ahead and remove the rest of these broken pads to make sure I don't end up seeing any more broken pads that are physically the broken interposer pads. And then I'm gonna just go ahead and do an RF swap. So let's get some of these guys removed over here. I'm just using plain old Kessler solder. 6337 if I'm not mistaken. So that's what I want to keep seeing, just nice shiny pads. So we don't have to deal with rebuilding any interposer pads. I'm not really a fan of rebuilding interposer pads, if you ask me. I don't mind RF, the RF side, as long as we don't have too many pads that are broken. The goal is just to get your iron close enough so that the surface tension pretty much picks up the broken pads for you. So far, those seem like the only two that are broken, which I'm kind of happy with at the moment. We just got about 3 or 4 left. I'm happy with what I see. There's only essentially just 2 broken interposer pads. And now that I see that and I can confirm that, I'll go ahead and do the RF swap. So yep, just those 2. But everything else around the surrounding area looks fine. And here you can kind of see the magnitude of what's going on here. I see this a lot on 14s where the RF board gets warped. So you get a giant gap over here. It's happened to me before. I rebuilt like 20 pads in the past and then I couldn't even get the sandwich to close. So anytime you get warping like this, where it's kind of flush all the way to the end, but then you get this open gap over here, there's just this RF board just warped. So that's what's leading me to just go ahead and do a RF swap. So let's go ahead and remove baseband. This is now gonna be a parts board, so I don't care about cleaning all of the edge glue or anything like that. I'm gonna remove some of these resistors out the way, just so I can get my knife in there, my blade, and just get a clean pull. So we'll get ready to come in with our tool in just a bit. That's it. We got our baseband. Set that to the side. Let's go for Wi-Fi. I'm gonna remove some of these caps out the way. Again, this is just a parts board. You guys will see when I'm prepping my my new board, I'm gonna be a little bit more careful, way more careful. But right now, I just need to get things out the way so I can get in there nice and clean. All right, so I'm gonna just remove some components out the way. So you're gonna see me move a whole bunch of stuff out the way. And this is where I'm gonna get in with my Wi-Fi. Let's go ahead and grab my blade. Nice even heat. Start from a little bit far. Sometimes with Wi-Fi, you gotta be a little patient. Wi-Fi typically has a bunch of ground paths. We can start coming in. That's it. We got our Wi-Fi removed. And we'll set these guys to the side. Now that we took off the Wi-Fi IC and the baseband CPU, we went ahead and ordered a brand new donor board. So we've got a good known donor board, and then pretty much we're gonna transfer over the Wi-Fi IC and the baseband CPU. All we have to do is just copy the EEPROM from this native RF board and swap it over to the donor board's RFs. So let's go ahead and continue with that process. So let's remove some of this thermal paste. What I like to do is switch my number 11 blades, put some brand new ones on there. I mainly use a number 11 in conjunction with a 007 to lift ICs and clean the side glue. So I grab 2 of these guys. It's pretty much straightforward. You can get this little metal holder from Mobile Centrics, slide it in, push down, and we get our second one installed. Like that. So we got 2 brand new 11 blades. Set that to the side. Grab me a board holder. Let's go ahead and get this inside of a board holder. Got that in there nice and snug. We can go ahead and start cleaning the edge glue. So as you've seen before, if you don't clean the side glue, pretty much all the components are just gonna come up with the IC. And since this is our permanent board that we're gonna be using for the transplant, everything needs to come out perfect. So this is in this event, I'm gonna be taking my time and making sure I'm very careful. I would say with a number 11 blade, you're definitely gonna have to learn how to use it because it's technically a surgical blade. So in the beginning, I used to scratch the board pretty deep, but over time, I learned that I have to let the heat do the job. So you're not gonna remove this glue with brute force. It doesn't require a lot of force to remove the glue. It's one thing I try to teach my students. It's also a balance with temperature. So if you have the right temperature, you shouldn't struggle with this. As you see, components aren't flying off because I'm just using a general preheating temperature. It's okay if at the end when you remove the IC, you see light scratching, but you don't want to see deep scratches on the board. If you scratch deep enough, you can disconnect the connections between like this resistor and the traces under baseband CPU. Sometimes you gotta go at high angles. Like when you see a capacitor that's like tugged up really close against the chip. The trick is just to go at a really high angle, and you won't damage the capacitor. You don't necessarily need to go all the way to the bottom, but if you have space, try to remove as much glue as possible. Again, being as delicate as possible, there's not a lot of glue in this area. We just have to separate it from the resistors. In my experience, if you mess up a resistor or if it's loose or you kick it off, something is usually bound not to work. Although I have to check ZXW because sometimes you get a lot of resistors. When you see a bunch of resistors in a crowd like this, sometimes they have both legs on ground. All right, so just backing off my air a little bit, just making sure we have everything disconnected as far as the glue from the edges. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's move over towards the Wi-Fi area where you got to be a little bit more careful. You've got ceramic capacitors, you've got little narrow ICs. So if you're not aware, this is your first time, or you're getting good at this and you're not aware what's under this underfill or side glue, just look at ZXW. Sometimes you'll have components, and you'll dig and you'll clean, and then you'll end up knocking the component off. I know that happened to me back in the days, like around the iPhone 7 days, where I'd like be replacing the NAND. Right at the point where I got really good at replacing the NAND, I'd see like these little glass chips, and I didn't notice that they were there because I was just I didn't want to look at the board view. And lo and behold, yeah, there was some chips that I had to replace. So sometimes I'll kind of move around gently like this, just to kind of see what's under here. If I don't see too much, then I kind of go a little bit. I could be a little bit more aggressive, but you always want to be mindful of components that are like suspended in the side glue. We can grab a little bit more from this side. Nothing too crazy. I don't like to have too much glue left over. That's the beauty of this number 11. You can pretty much get inside of almost in between any hard to reach place. I'll probably speed this part up because I just like to be really picky around the Wi-Fi. I've had issues in the past, like not being as patient and then having like a resistor loose or missing a few ceramic capacitors. Stuff that happens to all of us. Let's go ahead and read the EEPROM info, and so I can transfer it over to my from my native board to my donor board. Okay, we got those two, and we have our programmer. Let's go ahead and get our programmer ready. We're gonna copy, obviously, the board that has a million broken pads. All right, so I'm gonna sit this face down on the programmer. There we go. So we're gonna push down, slide up and show you guys what it's showing me. So 14 series BB chip. We're gonna go ahead and go to read, RD for read. This is our good one, so I always like to look at it to make sure I'm reading the right one. I'm gonna go to read. My read is completed. I'm going to also verify that this has the broken pads. And we can set this to the side, and we're gonna write it to the one that we have prepped the baseband area already. Everything looks lined up over here, more or less. You have to be very patient. There we go. I'm gonna keep my finger on here. Just have to put a little more pressure. 14 series baseband chip again. And we're gonna write. And before I write, I look at the bad board to understand we're writing it to the good board. So we're writing it. It says, "Are you sure?" WR to write, writing, and good to go. So we'll take this guy out now. And all we need to do is prep the Wi-Fi area, wick this, prep our baseband and Wi-Fi ICs. We have them inside this container. And then it's still not done. You've got to take the bottom board, rebuild those two pads, and then reball it. Yeah, so sit back and enjoy the ride. All right, let's go ahead and start prepping the baseband CPU. We need to go ahead and change the alloy from that high temp, factory high temp to 183. First, I'll use 148. Then I'll add a little bit of 148 on top. Final paste is going to be 183, but with the 148, I can use pieces of solder wick to kind of lightly brush and get rid of the oxidation. So let's get rid of this oxidation. As we brush lightly and get rid of all of the oxidation. At this point, we are going to wick it, but before we wick it, we'll go ahead and get rid of some of the side glue. On both sides. Come back with a chisel. Get all of that 148 off. It's also removing the last layers of oxidation. And that should be it. We'll set this to the side and get it ready for reballing. So we tackle the Wi-Fi. Definitely on the Wi-Fi, I see we're gonna have a bunch of surrounding components. That's the one that I pulled, and I didn't care about cleaning any of the glue at all. So we'll get this on here. I'll try to get these last few off the edge over here. For the Wi-Fi, I use very low heat for everything. Actually using like less than glue cleaning temperature just to clean the edge of this glue. Then I'll use 148 to mix the alloy. We can clean that side when we're done. We can just leave it like this. This is fine. All right. Okay. Come back and wick with a very low temperature. I don't like leaving my iron on the Wi-Fi for too long. That's good enough. If this Wi-Fi IC overheats, there's no way of replacing it. So I'm gonna be careful how much heat you add to it. You gotta be really delicate. You pretty much get one try. With the older series, you can use a programmer, iPhone 10, iPhone 11. You can use a iPhone 8. You can use programmers to unbind Wi-Fi. Like a P13 or any compatible JC programmer, and many other programmers as well. But starting from the 12 series, you can't unbind Wi-Fi. Let's go ahead and set this to the side. Now it's time for reballing. I'm gonna go ahead and get my baseband CPU first. We have a 14 series stencil over here. So just need a good known stencil. I'm gonna go ahead and line this up here first, and then we'll switch to the microscope. For my baseband, I'm going to should be the one over here. We'll switch to the microscope cam. So I like to push down a little bit once I have a good alignment, push down all around the perimeter. Now to kind of get the IC pushed into the paper towel, creating almost like a 3D effect or imprint where it won't slide as much. Again, be very picky on how you align it. You only want to do this once, and I'm good right there. We'll go ahead and apply our paste. Paste is semi-dry. Still a little wet, but not enough to cause issues like splashing and merging between the grids, the BGA grids. You don't want it too dry and you don't want it too wet. So those are good practice to dry your paste. So I'll come from one corner all the way to the next a few times, get it nice and even, and then come back and just scrape all of it off. I like to take a clean room wipe and lightly glide over it. Push down with angle tweezers. Then I can transfer the focus from my fingers. I'll do one finger up and I roll the other one. It's one of the tricks that I do. So we'll just go around in circles. That controls the stencil from warping. Then I like to control the tweezers in a direction to where the solder balls are forming. So big circles in the beginning. That ensures we're preheating the stencil and not just trying to heat up your general area instantly. So after about 5 more seconds of going in big circles, I like to start from a corner. Slowly start to shift. You see my tweezers moving as it's forming. Like I'll even stop sometimes just to reshift my tweezers. And if it's taking too long to form, I'll stop and I'll go back and do wide circles to preheat it. Then I'll go right back to it. And that's it. You gotta take this out the stencil within a few seconds. We may have one ball there. I can live with that. I could actually take that ball, find where it's missing from, and then poke it, kind of keep it on there. And we could even reflow it just like this. Just 2 balls. I'll fix these 2 before we try to reflow it. That's fixed. That's fixed. Now we can add some flux. Hold it in place. Let me actually move this towel out the way, this paper towel, because it's just gonna affect the depth of focus on the microscope. I'm gonna keep this flat on the table. Same temperature, just going around in circles. That's it. That's perfect. All right, it looks good to me right there. We'll set this to the side. All right, let's get some paste on the Wi-Fi. See? Focus on the corner over here for just a second. Angle tweezers. And let's go. Let's flow this into place. All right, let's get this out the stencil while it's nice and warm. And let's reflow this guy. Inspecting always, as always. All right, let's get this installed. Okay, so let's start with baseband CPU. Our dot should go towards this little funny looking capacitor, and the Q should go towards the coils. So let's go ahead and flip this over and see what side we're on. Yep, let's get this guy like this. Kind of remembering the spacing. You can kind of see the scratch marks from where we left the scratch marks before. Get rid of this glare. I'm actually gonna need that so I can see the scratches, the light. And the spacing was tight on this side, but it wasn't all the way up against the capacitor. Move over to this side a little bit. Go ahead and get this in place. Start off at a little lower temperature first. Kind of just start from far, warm the board up. So we're looking for a bit of a shift in just a little bit. Get that down. Got a little bit of a shift. Wait until everything starts boiling. I'm gonna go up with temperature just a little bit. And we should have a good install once we bump it. And it should come back. Just a few seconds more. I'm kind of going up and down just to make sure I don't overheat any coils. And then at the very last second, I'll keep this right on top. Small circles. Waiting for the flux to boil again. We can see we can bump it. We were able to bump it and it came back. Good. Let that cool down for a second before we move anything. It's time to get our Wi-Fi installed. So this little dot that I see goes towards the shield. Yep. Let's line this up. That should be good right there. Same thing. I'm going to preheat the board just for a couple seconds. And then this guy should settle in. I'm gonna switch to this position over here. Should be good right there. Let that cool off. So what I want to do right now is just throw this in an eye socket and make sure we still have an IMEI and see if Wi-Fi is working. I'll do a little bit more extra cleaning when I know I'm going to put it inside of an eye socket. Yep, spacing and everything looks fine. Nothing looks overheated. All right, let's throw this in an eye socket. All right, so good news. This is where we're at. So basically, once we unlock the phone, I don't know if the screen disconnected. Let's see if we can wake the phone up. Maybe it's just not recognizing my gloves. Yeah. So, take these gloves off. I've got flux on them and they can't recognize my fingers. So if we check for, it says cellular error, but if I go to general and about, modem firmware is missing here, but it's on 3 uses. It's interesting. That's an IMEI and a modem firmware. All right, let's go ahead and update this real quick. Just to make sure we have a modem firmware, we'll go ahead and connect it to the PC. So we gave it another shot with doing a software retained user data flash, and we got the same cellular error. Now, what I discovered is I had to go back in the video and kind of slow down and do a visual inspection. So when I went to go lift baseband CPU, I actually knocked off 2 resistors and a capacitor, apart from the other cap that I put back. So that's something that I was able to kind of just see by slowing down and taking a look at the perimeter of the baseband CPU area. And let me show you real quick. This resistor got knocked off, the one that went this way. And then I had a resistor and a capacitor in this area. I think I was so caught up in being focused on this cap being missing, these 2 little capacitors being missing, or I think it was just one, I can't really remember at the moment. But I think I was so hell-bent on just putting that one back that I totally did not pay attention to any resistors or capacitors that were missing from this area next to the coils. That's the reason why we kept getting cellular error. So definitely just always pay attention to loose resistors or missing resistors. I'm gonna go ahead and prompt a boot, and let me go ahead and get this wireless charging pad connected because the customer's wireless charging pad is indeed defective. So I wanna hold the power button, and then we're gonna make sure that everything is up and running. Now, as far as the unit already, being reballed, I did skip that in the video just to save some time, but we're gonna verify Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, also modem firmware and IMEI. We're also gonna check if the back cameras is working and the front camera is working. The front camera was working prior, but we had an issue with the back camera. So let's see if the back camera is working. As you can see, the back camera is now working. Before it did not, due to those 2 pads that I had to rebuild on the bottom, and the front camera is indeed working. So let's go to Wi-Fi. I'm actually already connected from the last time I put it in the eye socket, but we can see that we're connected to my network. And yes, we are connected. Let's verify if we can load websites, GameStop.com. And see if we're able to load. Yep, we're able to load GameStop. So the surfing is fine. Now let's go back to IMEI and modem firmware and make sure we don't have any cellular error. So all those messages that you guys saw previously are gone. I'm gonna go ahead and go to about, and we do now have the Wi-Fi MAC address, and we now have the modem firmware. So this phone is fixed. We just had to go through a series of just replacing the RF board, the top board essentially, because this phone, I found out the unit was ran over. Now, typically we don't work on units that are ran over. Why? Because we kind of point those towards data recovery. But this guy's a phone flipper, and he got the phone at a really great price, sent it over to us. There was no data related. They had the unit for about a month. It would fail during a flash. He said he tried to flash it over and over throughout the course of weeks, And then finally one day the flash went through. But only to discover that it's boot looping and as well as the camera. They didn't know that the back camera didn't work, but obviously you could see from the video the broken pads that led to the camera circuit. We had to restore that and able to restore the functionality with the cameras. So yeah, it's a lot of work involved, but definitely make sure you send this to somebody who's an experienced technician, because this is not a straightforward repair. Any little thing can go wrong. The thing about soldering is that you miss one step or something is off, as little as a resistor, you can even have circuits like, cellular service not working. So let's address the elephant in the room. Why did I work on this unit when I knew that it was ran over? This is a side project for a phone flipper. Also a good friend of mine, Don from Dino's Phones, he went ahead and reached out like a week back and said, hey, Isaiah, can you fix this phone? And in the beginning, I didn't have that much device history, but later on, I think as he was going through the batches, he reached out and said, hey man, I think that's the one that was ran over by a car. So in the beginning of the video, if you pay very close attention, the unit was not signed into iCloud. The unit was already DFU restored. There was no data on the phone. So this wouldn't be a data recovery scenario, and hence that there's no data to back up. But in most cases, if you bring me a unit or a phone that's been ran over, hit by a dumbbell at Planet Fitness, a domestic dispute that the unit's been slammed on the floor, it's gonna be data recovery. It actually takes a lot of work to fix a unit in this condition. Fortunately, Wi-Fi and baseband and everything was working like you saw previously in the video. But in most cases, catastrophic damage, you're gonna find something that's not gonna work. So we got a little bit lucky on this one. Again, this was for a phone flipper. So if you are into phone flipping, I know a lot of people in the industry. A buddy of mine, Fernando, sends me phones from time to time that he gets at a really good price, but the board doesn't turn on or it's a no power issue. I'm able to fix it at a discounted rate and they're able to, flip the phone and make money. So we're definitely an avenue for if you want to do business as far as phone flipping, if you want to do B2B, if you want to learn micro soldering. We do have a micro soldering course. Just click on the link on the website that you see down below. But I hope that makes sense to you guys, that it's catastrophic. It's just we push it for data recovery 100%. Only because we want to be able to stand by our business practices and offer some type of warranty. If you stayed all the way to the end of this video, I know this is a long-winded video, but at the end of the day, we did cut out a couple of segments like the full reballing and the full rebuilding of the pads, just so this video wouldn't be like 2 hours. I appreciate everybody who keeps coming back to tune into my content, and I'm always gonna try to find some new content for you guys. And again, we get it all. We get catastrophic, we get rabbit holes, we get customers with not enough device history, and then we always have to take it from there. So I'll see you guys later. Peace.